Because it's not even just about getting into rehab. Like sometimes it's about, getting your life rebuilt after you're sober. And with addicts that have really hit being on the street bottom, they don't have the incentive. When you look at somebody who is a street person, this is one of the biggest challenges that's facing homelessness and street addiction, is they don't have incentive to remain sober. They do not. They don't. I mean, when you think about it, what good is being sober for them? They're going to get sober, they're going to get out of the rehab, and then they're right back on the street. And living on the street is depressing, and it's hard, and you may have to stay up all night so all your doesn't get ripped off. There's no incentive to be sober on the street. No one's giving you a job. You don't have a house to go home to. You don't have any money. You don't have a pot to piss in. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. Like doing drugs or being inebriated while you're homeless is part of the survival. It's almost like a necessary requirement to survive the hostility of being homeless. It's very different if they were, getting off rehab and then they had a place to live and a job and some money in the bank. So the street level addiction is much more than even just getting them sober. They need to have something in their life that they don't need to escape from. And in fact, if you look at cities, what happens a lot of times in the winter is the street addicts will literally, they will go out and get in trouble because if they get arrested, like if you're in New York City and you get arrested in December, it's staying alive. You know what I mean? Like those guys, they'd rather get arrested because then they're going to get a hot meal. And it's going to be warm. They're going to be sleeping in a jail cell. You know what I'm saying? Like for homeless people, the arresting is almost a better deal for them, right? Because that means they get fed and they get a warm place to stay for like a week or a month while they do their little stint. We need to change the entire system. It's got to be based on incentive. And that's why homeless people, you should literally just give them houses. If you've fallen that far and you've ended up on the street and you've survived, you deserve. Here's your little house. Let's get you a house. Let's get you cleaned up. Let's get you healthy. Let's get you some mental health care. Okay? Like you fell that far and you stayed alive. You didn't off yourself. You didn't go murder someone. You made it work. Even like hitting rock bottom. Let's reward you. Yes, with a house and a place to live. No people would not work. What are you talking about, boss? Of course they would. Many of those people, they want to work. You're insane. You think you help people and it turns them into bad people. It doesn't. When you help people, it turns them into good people. Dude, you were literally asking me about Biden and Trump 3 years ago, boss. Off. Get out of my chat. Disingenuous. Go away. When people are loved and taken care of, they do good. What's funny about it is the people like that idiot who's like, oh, people would never want to work. They've done studies. We know that universal basic income makes people more likely to devote themselves. People work harder. People are harder working and do much more when their basic needs are met. They don't get lazy. They get excited. They get ambitious, which is why when you look at people that are born into wealthy families, why are their kids so ambitious? Because all their needs are met. They never worry about where their next meal is coming from. They have nice clothes. They have access to tutors and teachers. If they want to try a new skill or a new adventure, they have the money to be able to do it, to be able to learn it. If their parents aren't available, they have nannies and they're ambitious because they're cared for. When you're struggling to keep your head above water and you can barely survive and it feels like one bump is going to break your whole house of cards down, you don't have time to be ambitious. You're desperate. You're just trying to keep your head above water. Dude, it's so obvious. We know this. The one thing that people of wealth have that people of non-wealth don't is when you have a certain amount of wealth, your basic needs are just met. And then you can spend your time trying to achieve things or chase dreams. When your basic needs are not met, you have to spend your time meeting basic needs. Real simple, guys. It's like all about who has the resources. The more resources you have, the more you can chase things. And some of this is baked into our system, like a lot of the really big positions. If you have a kid who wants to be a journalist, who wants to go into politics, who wants to go into corporate jobs, one of the huge things that allows people to get into a company like Tommy Hilfiger or Vogue magazine or NBC is the intern system. It works in NFL and in college sports. You want to go into coaching, interns. You want to go into politics, you intern for senators, for judges. You intern at Vogue, at Maxim, at the Wall Street Journal, at the Washington Post, right? But who can go intern at the New York Times? Only somebody whose parents can pay for them to have an apartment and to live in New York City while they're working for free. But that kid who can intern at the New York Times is going to have a huge head start at becoming a bureau chief or a New York Times reporter or going into, radio or TV afterwards. But our system is based around internships, but somebody who's poor cannot access those. They have zero access. If you are a poor kid, it's going to be really hard for you to ever get into the New York Times. There's still some that will make it through the cracks. But what's going to happen, though, is every rich kid who wants to work at the New York Times gets to try and fail before one poor kid even gets a shot at it. And that's just some of the inequity that we should try to repair a little bit. It's really shitty to have a system that only affords the good opportunities to people that are in sort of the ownership class. That is super problematic. It is. We have to fix that. We need to get everyone into the ownership class. That doesn't mean everyone has to have the same wealth, but I literally think everyone should own a home. I don't think people should be stuck renting. I know that may sound like super leftist or super communist, whatever, and I don't give a shit. We need to do something about the rental crisis. We absolutely do. We need to do something about the rental crisis because the way it works with rent, if you get stuck in the rental world, you're never going to own property. It's getting nearly impossible in America. The problem with owning property in America, there's two things you need. You need a loan and you need a down payment. Now, the down payment is like $40,000. $50,000 or more. That means you have to have that amount of money to give away in one go, which you don't. If you're paying $1,500 a month for rent, that's $18,000 a year that you're paying for rent. That means in 10 years, you have spent $180,000 on your housing. That is all gone to somebody else. Somebody else got 180 grand in 10 years and you have nothing for your own house. Dude, it's horrible. And there's so many things that are like that. Rent does that. It bleeds money. Car insurance is another one. And health insurance. You pay thousands of dollars a year for health and car insurance. And then if you don't get sick and you don't get in any accidents, that money is just gone. And yes, the mortgage payment is cheaper. So while you're paying $1,500 a month to rent your house, you're paying the homeowner's mortgage, which is probably like $900. You're paying his house payment. You're buying that house for him and giving him a little bit of a disposable income while simultaneously making sure you can never get your own house. Dude, it's so toxic. It's horrible. And apartment buildings are the worst. There's some people out there that own like 10 apartment buildings. So the people who own a bunch of houses and own a bunch of apartments are wealthy as shit and they don't have to work. They're living on your dime. The ownership class is living on your dime. That's the cycle capitalism wants. It's fucking toxic, bro. The capitalism cycle is terrible, bro. It is. Wealth extraction without creating value. The entire system is built on that. There's no bigger example of that than shareholders. Shareholders are a classic example. They get dividend checks and they're not creating any value. And in fact, they are part of the decision-making body. So now they get to start making decisions that are going to increase the amount of their checks that they're not working for. And those decisions will all affect the people that are creating the value that's providing the check. Now, what is that, bro? That's insane. So I'm rich enough to buy a share of a company, and now I get to make the decisions on what the workers are going to have to do in order to maximize my money that I get for not working. That's our system. Like when people say, oh, the rich people work for it. No, they don't. They don't. The rich people don't work for it. That's the whole point. That's the problem with the system. The rich people get a whole bunch of money for doing jack shit. That's literally the problem with the system. The rich people don't have to work. They get free money. I mean, you can have a situation like my son has, where what we did was he pays rent to live here, but we don't spend his rent. We're taking his rent and we're putting it in the bank. And then we are doing a matching thing. It's socialism, right? But we're taking his rent money and we're taking an extra amount that we match and we're putting that all in the bank. So he's working right now to pay rent, but in 4 years, he's going to be able to buy a condo because he's going to have a down payment from his rent and our matching. So we're essentially helping him get into the ownership class. He's paying rent, but his rent isn't just going to feed somebody else and pay somebody else's thing. Now, he's really lucky to have a situation like that. I did not have a situation like that. I'm happy that I can provide him a situation like that. But every person in the world deserves a situation like that. They deserve to work hard and pay to live and have what they're paying benefit them. You know what I'm saying? The thing about it is, though, not everybody can do that. Not every parent can actually do that. But Jenny and I were lucky. The reason why we're able to do that is because we got help buying our house. We don't have a house payment. If we had a house payment, we certainly couldn't do that for Bryce. But we don't have a house payment. Our house is paid off. So we can do that for Bryce. But a lot of parents, they can't. They have a house payment. But my point being, though, is that every human being deserves that. Like, every human being should be able to own property. It shouldn't be that some people never get to own property and they just get exploited by the property owners for their whole life. That sucks. But yeah, it's tough, bro. It's a tough world out there, guys.